What's up, everybody? This is Yeti, back again to knock out the compass video for the land navigation series, so stay tuned. So we'll run over the different parts. It just covers the lensatic compass. This is the compass that the military uses pretty exclusively of the compass, so you can kind of orient yourselves to the terminology and everything, different parts so you can use it. Then we'll go into the use of the compass itself. And there's a bunch of hilarious photos of people using it right and wrong, which I really appreciate. This particular PowerPoint has been totally ripped from soldiers a long time ago, probably more than 10, 15 years ago. But it's a good solid PowerPoint, runs you through the compass and how to use it, as well as, you know, kind of basic, intermediate, and advanced land navigation. I use it at work, train soldiers up. So very useful PowerPoint. All right, so we'll start here with just kind of what the compass is. And the PowerPoint does a good job of talking about the difference between a legitimate lensatic compass. It's made by Kaminga, looks like. There's a lot of knockoffs, so we'll talk about that later. All right, so this first slide basically says the lensatic compass is a design that preferred by military forces for its precision and durability. It's designed to take hyper accurate bearings for land navigation and directing artillery fire. Generally speaking, like your very, very ultra cheap compasses, they'll give you a general idea of north, south, east, west, but you'll be unable to hold an accurate bearing or an accurate azimuth using those for navigation. So you'll want one of these. We'll go to the next slide. And so here's some of the description items preferred by the military for its precision and durability, hyper accuracy, and land navigation and combat. We already talked about that. It says battle tested, shock, water, sand proof, and functional from negative 50 degrees to positive 150 degrees. That's a pretty big range. Bold claim, I think. Uses a retractable lens to read the bearing while simultaneously sighting an object. We'll go through how to do that later. With lensatic compass, you just point and shoot one target and immediately move on to the next. Luminous lights allow for navigation in low light conditions and night lamp navigation. It's equipped with magnifying lens, sight wire, and dial graduations in both degrees and mils to ensure accurate readings. Mils are generally going to be for artillery fire. If you're not in the military, you won't use that. Let's see. Copper induction dampening system slows the rotation of the magnet without the use of liquids. It employs a card type compass dial, and this makes for a single-handed operation, which is handy. Most magnetic needle type always requires two hands. A deep well design is used to allow the compass to be used globally with little or no effect in accuracy caused by tilting compass dial. Lensatic sighting compasses are so simple and rugged and incredibly easy to use that it is no wonder they are the standard type used for navigation by the U.S. military, because there's a bunch of dum-dums, right? All right, next slide. Okay, so this is where we're going to talk about just the copies and stuff you got to worry about on Amazon generally. When you go to buy one of these things, because you love this video and you want to get out in the woods and land navigate, you're going to run across these, probably $10 imitations on Amazon made from some rando company out of China. So make sure that it comes from the proper company here. Kaminga is the company that I had mine from, I guess. So lots of imitations out there. Make sure that you spend about $45 on it, is I think what I paid. I'll try to put a link in the description so you guys can grab one and not be ripped off. So some of the sites, they claim to be selling U.S. military lensatic compasses for just $14.95. Those are all fake, no exceptions. Generally costs about $45, I do believe. And it looks like there's a link on there that you can go to that website and actually order a proper one. Next slide. We don't have any questions. This isn't interactive. All right, so we'll just go over the parts since we have this handy dandy slide. All right, so that top piece that folds is going to be a cover. We got the base. We got the lens rear sight. Those markings on the top, they're luminous, so they will glow in the dark and help you line it up with a sighting wire. If it was to be dark. You got luminous heading marks, luminous bezel line, luminous magnetic arrow. Those will be the ones that you line up when you get your proper azimuth. You get a fixed index line, floating dial, bezel ring. That's that black ring that rotates. You can turn that. Sighting slot. That's actually what you're going to be looking through when you do your sighting.
There's your magnifying lens.
There's your lanyard ring. So it's going to hopefully have a nice lanyard attached to it so you can tie that thing off to your gear or at least have it around your neck, your belt loop. Your thumb loop, you're actually going to throw your thumb through the top of that. Show that later. It gives you positive control over the compass when you're using it. You got graduated sight or straight edges, right? Those are marked off for a 1/50,000 map. It's like their standard military map. All right, so here's the cover. Protects the floating dial and other parts of the compass when closed. Pretty nice. The sighting wire, that's what you're going to use to aim at a landmark so that you can get the proper azimuth to it, right? Luminous sighting dots, okay, those are used for night, right? So that you can see where that sighting wire actually is. So you can actually also utilize it at night. Straight edge, graduated straight edge. All right, here's the base. This is the main part of the compass. That bezel ring, super useful. You'll be able to turn that so that you can line up those luminous dots, or sorry, luminous lines, so that you can navigate at night. Also helps during the day. Bezel ring, yeah, so this is worth noting. It's full 360-degree rotation. It's 120 clicks total. So that means each click is three degrees on the red dial there. Those red lines and numbers, those are degrees. The black ones are mils. So just keep that in mind. But if you were to turn that bezel ring, each click is going to equal 3 degrees. Okay, so it's got the floating dial. We just talked about that. Black is mils, red is degrees. Okay, luminous heading. Yep, we already talked about that. Luminous magnetic arrow. Those are just those lines that you line up. We'll talk about it later. Thumb loop. We already talked about it. Fixed index line. Lanyard ring. All right, next slide. So we're just looking at that floating dial, right? And so they're going to give you a close up here on the degrees and the mils. So that black ring is of course mils, right? So again, military uses it for artillery fire, stuff like that, because it's more precise. It just breaks down degrees into smaller measurements, so you can be more accurate. So that's why they're there. There's 6,400 total. Now we get a close up there. The distance between small marks is 20 mils. And distance between big marks is 100 mils. Fun fact: the military binoculars they are graduated in 5 and 10 mil increments. It's on purpose so that you can utilize compass and adjust artillery fire using binoculars, stuff like that. Right? Cool. Artillery folks work in mills. That's how it works. Also, just so that dispel any questions about it, but you also have scopes. Scopes may or may not have markings that are in mrads, milliradians. These are the same things. These are milliradians. It's an angular unit of measurement, right? So they are in fact the same thing. Moving on. So distance between the numbers, right? So you got 4 and a 5 there. It's 200 mils. And just for reference, north is going to be the number 64, which equals 6,400 mils, right? East is 16, so 1,600 mils. South is 3,200 mils. West is 4,800 mils. And just for, conceptualizing, half a degree is 8.89 mils, and 1 degree is 17.78 mils for all the math nerds out there. Now we'll talk about the red ring. That's generally the one that folks use for navigating. It's the common unit of measure, which is degrees. Of course, it's got 360 degrees, which is a circle. Distance between the red marks are 5 degrees. Distance between the big marks, right? Big mark to big mark, that's 10 degrees. So you got 5 or 10 degrees. And distance between the numbers themselves is 20 degrees. That's why we go 0 to 20 to 40 to 60 to 80. And for reference, going around the circle, you got north is 0 degrees, east is 90, South is 180, and west, of course, is 270.
Hello, guys. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them.
Next slide. All right, so now we'll talk about that straight edge there. So again, this was for a 1/50,000 scale map, right? Which is not every map, just so you're aware. It would have to actually say 1/50,000 in the margin of your map, and then that would equal the true distance if you're trying to use it to measure. It's approximately 1 inch, right? Is every 13 tick marks. Okay. Of course, on that right hand side there at the base compass, you've got 0. And then every 5 ticks is 1 centimeter. And every 10 ticks, right? That's going to be 1 kilometer. So 5 ticks, 500 meters, 10 ticks, 1,000 meters, right? And so that's why they've marked the 2,000 there. That's 2,000 meters. They've marked 4,000 and then 6,000 meters. Of course, in between there with the big line, that's going to be 1,000 meters and so on. Just giving you the ability to use just your compass on the map if you don't have any other items. Okay, next slide. All right, so this slide is going to talk about the lens rear sight. Okay, this is what you're actually going to use to shoot your azimuth during daylight. So you're using this portion as generally a rear sight, like on a gun, right? So you would line up this rear sight, you'd look through that cut in the middle, and then you would look through it to the sighting wire, line that up with your target, right? Maybe it's a big tree, and then you would look through the magnifying glass and read the number, and that would be your super accurate azimuth that you just shot. Okay. Also, fun fact, when you do shoot that azimuth and you're done and you're ready to start moving, typically you want to drop this this rear sight down on top of your floating dial, and that'll actually lock it down to where it's not moving around, save you some wear and tear while moving. Next slide.
All right, guys. Again, if you have questions, drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them.
All right, so now we'll talk about handling the compass itself. So when you first buy your compass, you want to do some checks to make sure it functions properly. So some of those things are checking if the dial that it doesn't stick right. You should be able to tilt it slightly, and it should not get hung up. Should float around and correct itself. If it doesn't and it sticks a lot, that is malfunctioning compass. Sighting wire, you want to make sure it's nice and straight, not bent. Glass is not broken. The numbers on the dial are legible and not smudged or just funky, sideways etching, stuff like that. Sometimes they mess up. Check for accuracy along a known line of direction, right? So, like military land nav courses or whatever, usually they have a post and it'll have a posted azimuth in a particular direction. You get to set your compass up against it and generally check and make sure that it's within 3 degrees of variation. If it's within 3 degrees, we'll call it good. If it's outside of that, you have an inaccurate compass that will screw you over for sure, get you lost. It also tells you that there's a variance of a half a degree, regardless, just from the manufacturer. So keep that in mind. And also, you got to watch out for effects of metal and electricity, right? So, certain things will throw off your compass when you're trying to navigate. Um, if you're carrying a weapon and that weapon's metal, or if there's any parts that are metal, there's some polymer stuff out there, but there's definitely still some metal in there. It'll throw off your compass. Fun fact. So make sure when you're shooting azimuth, you keep that away from your rifle, or pull your rifle away, set up against a tree, something like that. But get the compass away from metal so that it's accurate and you're not walking like 8-10 degrees off, not even realizing it. Also, if you happen to walk underneath some high tension power lines, maybe you're using that as a navigation aid and you're trying to follow some high tension power line, just don't shoot an azimuth expecting it to be accurate. It does say that you need to be 55 meters away, which is pretty far, right? Away from your truck, 10 meters away from that truck. Make sure that it's accurate. Hunting rifle or just any rifle, 2 meters away, right? And which should be pretty far away. Knife, flashlight, binoculars, camera, stuff in your pockets, that sort of thing. You want to be half a meter away. And for those of you non-military folks, meter is just a shade farther, longer than a yardstick. So don't get hung up on it. It's about a yard. Next slide. All right, so this is talking about inspecting your compass. Don't really feel like reading through all of that. We went over the basics. check and make sure it's functioning properly. Don't get it super grimy. That's probably a big takeaway there. If you get it all sandy, it's gonna grind. It's not gonna function very well. So take care of your stuff. Clean it after use. Slide. All right, now we'll get into actually using your compass. Okay, so there's lots of different ways of doing this. There's typically two things that I do with it. Your hand to cheek method is one of them. I don't usually use it. I find it's accurate enough to just hold it out in front of you.
And use the sitter hold technique.
So this first method is the compass to cheek method. It's going to be your most accurate way of shooting an azimuth. So the main idea here is you bend up your compass kind of as shown. And what you're doing is you're trying to get that magnifying glass contorted to where you can see the dial it's on the bottom of the compass there. And you can also use that rear sight, right? The opening in the middle. You're going to look through that and you're going to be able to see that sighting wire. You're going to line those two things up, put those two things on whatever target it is that you're trying to shoot your azimuth to. Look down after you line those up through the magnifying glass, and then you'll see a zoomed up picture of the floating dial, and you'll be able to read those numbers pretty well. You can see the movement and everything, line them back up, and make sure that your azimuth is true. So that's the main idea there. All right, so you can see that he's taking a look through the rear sight and the sighting wire. He's lined those up, and he's looking at that big tree, and that's what he's going to walk to. And so if you're not tracking already, typically when you're walking from point A to point B, you've got a line of sight, right? The farthest thing that you can see from this point in the woods, maybe it's that tree right there. And so you shoot your azimuth to it and you walk and then you keep your pace count, right? And remember to use those ranger beads that we talked about on the last video, right? And so you'll shoot your azimuth, walk to that, keep counting your pace. And then once you get to that tree, then you'll shoot another azimuth on the same azimuth, or you'll shoot to another target on the same azimuth line. And then you'll start walking again. And you just keep doing that from waypoint to waypoint to waypoint, right? Until you change your azimuth to a different direction, right? So that's generally how you use it. The bottom portion there is showing you, like, after you line up the rear sight and the sighting wire on your target, that's when you look downwards through that magnifying glass. You obviously don't move the compass. And then you just read numbers and move out. So this is actually from a hilarious land navigation course that you take online in the Army. It's kind of embarrassing that you had to play video games, but that's the way it is. This is a nice little representation, though, of what you're actually seeing when you do the hand to cheek method. So you've lined up your rear sight with the sighting wire. You've placed those two things centered on whatever your target is, which right here, this is some kind of a water tower, looks like. And then you look through that magnifying glass and you can tell that he's about to head 65 degrees. That's his azimuth that he's shooting right now. Fun fact, it's also 1,150 mils. So that's cool. All right. The compass cheek technique is used almost exclusively for sighting and is the best technique for that purpose. Yeah, we already know that. The other method we'll show you is far more practical for movements. This is just, you're really trying to be accurate. Make sure you don't get lost. This is what you use. Recommended for the beginners, I would definitely say. All right. So we're going to go through a bunch of fun pictures that I like to go through. Some of these are pretty old. I really dig them back in the BDU days. So this dude right here, actually holding it correctly, right? So you kind of see how he's holding it sort of like a gun. He's got his thumb, you can't really see it, through the thumb loop, and he's supporting it with his offhand, kind of like a pistol, right? And he's holding it up to his eye so that he can aim through the rear sight and the sighting wire. And he's got one of those sweet Mariner covers. I like to call them Marines Mariners. Gets them all riled up.
Let me know if you're a mariner in the comments below.
And here we have what is most likely not quite a second lieutenant at ROTC, most likely. He is, in fact, holding it up correctly, though. And you'll see that these are slight variations, right? All right. I'm pretty sure there's like 1,000 memes with this chick on here from the Ordnance Corps. Looks like back in the day, flat brim hat. She looks terrible. She's also wrong, holding it super, super wrong. Now we have a square away female Marine, looks like. Let's see if she's right. She is right. Okay, we got Desert Storm chocolate chip uniform. That's pretty cool. He is also holding it right. This is kind of more along the lines of what I do. I actually touch the top of that rear sight to the top of the cover, just a fixed point, instead of messing around with distances and stuff. And I try to be I try to make it repeatable and consistent every single time. So I like to go to the same spot and hold it exactly the same way every single time. I, however, don't do that weird supporting hand thing that he's doing. So to each his own. All right. So this dude, what do you think? Right? Wrong? What do you think? Yeah, he's right. Super weird though how he's holding it. But basically, you're just lining up that rear sight with the sighting wire, and you're able to look through the magnifying glass to see the numbers. All right, we got some dude at JRTC or something wearing Miles gear, and he is holding it wrong. So he's gonna have a hard time looking through that rear sight and sighting wire like he's got it. You can definitely see down at the numbers though, but it doesn't do you any good if you're not on target with your rear sight and sighting wire. All right, this dude is also holding it right. This dude is holding it wrong. And this dude does not have his hand anywhere near his cheek. So it's kind of hard for it to be a hand cheek method. He needs to bring that thing up there and line up those two things, and he'll be good. All right. So now this is the far more practical one. This is the one I favor if you can't tell. It's a center hold method. So this is not as accurate for shooting an azimuth unless you're good. Just used to it or something. So this is just practical. It also helps you get your compass kind of away from your gear, that sort of thing. So I think it's useful. It does say that this requires, or it's less precise, but it's faster to use and can be used under all conditions of visibility, which is true. At night, you end up using just this because you're lining up those two luminous lines, setting your azimuth and going. It's actually way more simple to navigate at night. It's just harder because of visibility. But simplicity, it's easier. It's very simple. All right, you get the idea. This one, you're going to use your bezel ring to line up those lines if you didn't get that already. Set your azimuth, basically just turn your body with pointing your fingers, which, by the way, there's something special about the fingertips of your pointer finger. That's why it's called your pointer finger. It is somehow magically connected to your brain. So if you point in a certain direction, it's pretty intuitive for you to be able to hold it there and get a correct reading. So make sure that you hold your fingers along the side of the compass like that. All right, so here's step by step for the Barney style, folks. All right, so you hold the compass to your body, turn your body to the desired azimuth, right? So you're watching the numbers until you get to the right azimuth, and then you line up that black index line with where you want to go. So this example right here is 25 degrees. So it's the hash mark that's just past 20 because it's 5-degree increments. Without turning the compass, you rotate the bezel ring until the luminous bezel ring is aligned with the north arrow. So on the right hand side there, you'll see those two lines are lined up, and that black index line is where you want it to be on your azimuth. That is how you set up your compass for movement. So once you've got that, then you're good to go there, of course, until you have to change direction. Then you obviously have to repeat this process. As you're walking, you're going to keep those two lines lined up because it's going to try to rotate on you. You're going to be turning and stuff like that. So you just need to keep it lined up as you're moving and stop, recheck your azimuth, get lined back up and move out again. The more that you move without checking it, the more you'll get off course, that sort of thing. And that's especially true for thick terrain. You'll have to punch through brush and stuff like that. You'll get off track pretty easily.
All right, so that's the basics of the LENSATIC compass. Hope that helped somebody out. If you got something out of this video, then please drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Take it easy.